53% of your website's visitors are leaving before the page even loads. And that is not okay. But I want to show you how to fix it and why that's happening so that you know what to fix. But before I dive into all of that, if we haven't met before, my name is Caitlin. I run Launch the Damn Thing. I am a Squarespace designer and expert. I have been in the design industry for about 20 years, just shy. And I have a lot of tips to share because I have a print design background and a graphic design background before I started doing web almost 10 years ago. So, lots of tips to share, and I can break it down. So, let's go ahead and dive into the nitty gritty today. Why are large images actually hurting your website traffic and your conversions and your bounce rate and whatever else that you're maybe not aware of? So let's talk some numbers. I'll try to keep this really brief because it's here. You can read through it on the blog post. I'll link this in the description below. Basically, 59% of your web usage is likely to be coming from mobile. If we look at stat counters breakdown here, we can see that roughly 40% is coming from desktop and the other 60% is coming from mobile and less than 2% is coming from tablet users, which is mind-boggling and one of the many reasons why it doesn't actually matter so much anymore if your website doesn't behave well on tablet-specific browsers because the number of people browsing the internet on those devices is almost nil. So anyway, if you're wondering why is Squarespace not paying attention to tablet view, that's why. Let's go back and get geeky for a second. This chart here breaks down the average speeds based on speedtest.net's global index report, which you can check out here from the link in the blog. And it goes through like every country, average internet speeds for mobile and for fixed broadband. That's fiber, cable, satellite, DSL, whatever. So if we go back to the chart, you can see how long it takes to load certain file sizes. And if you think about your website page, everything that you put on it, everything that you add, whether it's a button, a text block element, if it's images, a gallery, if it's a summary kind of block where it's pulling in content from other pages, it's also pulling in those images and the titles and the buttons and the metadata for that. All of that stuff combined creates an overall file size for that page of your website. Squarespace has recommended file size limits for that, and that's the reason why they base their recommendation of the individual image sizes to be something specific. If you ignore their recommendations, your page will become rather large, kind of like a folder full of documents. The more documents you put in the folder, the bigger the file size of the folder is going to be, right? Same thing for your website page. The more you put on it, the bigger that file size is going to become and the slower it will load. Depending on the speed of the internet of the person viewing your website, and we know Squarespace is not widely known for being the fastest platform out there, so we don't want to contribute to that, slowing it down. Let's take a look at this and break it down really quick. Fiber internet, if we're averaging around 200 Mbps, it's megabits per second, and I'm explaining that up here, so if you care, you can go read it. Fiber internet, let's say we're at about 200. That's going to take 4 to 5 seconds to load just 100 megabytes of images, not including the rest of the content. If the page itself is bigger than that, that's just the images on the page. If it's a gallery of like 10 images and they're all 14 megabytes, or you have so many images that the whole gallery is 140 megabytes, that's going to take 6 to 7 seconds on this speed of that kind of internet. Let's say if cable is 50 to 100 on average, it's going to take 8 to 16 seconds to load. Same thing for mobile. So 48 megabits per second. It's going to take 17 seconds or 23 seconds. DSL is going to take 32 seconds to 45 seconds. And now we're close to a minute. And you can see the color coding here. Green is obviously the best. Yellow is starting to become like, wow, is somebody really waiting around for that? Absolutely not. Spoiler alert. No one's waiting for that. And then if you look at DSL, satellite, and mobile for 3G areas, we're not talking about 4 or 5G. This is areas that don't have access to LTE and 5G and whatever. Those are going to take 30 to 80 seconds to load and 45 to 112 seconds to load. This one is almost 2 minutes. It's just shy of 2 minutes. So If 59% of your viewers are using their mobile phones to look at your website and you happen to fall into this latter category down here, you're in trouble because nobody's sticking around for that. So that's why this is important. That's actually slower than the dial up speeds in 1999. I'm just saying. Google prioritizes faster websites and faster load times. I don't want to freak you out. If you're following best practices, then you're not going to be noticeably slow. Slower sites, however, get buried in search results. And if you are hoping to get free organic traffic from Google, from Bing, from Yandex, from wherever, from AI, then you need to make sure your website loads relatively quickly or people are going to bail and your website's going to get buried in the search results. So now that you understand the general idea behind why it matters if your shit is really big and you're putting it on your website and who that's affecting, now let's talk about the details of the Squarespace feature. They've just introduced the ability for us to use WebP finally in our asset library and on our websites. So what does that actually mean for us? The question that I've gotten since last video was Squarespace converts these things to WebP for us now. So problem solved. Correct? Wrong. I actually talked to them about this during my client project just last month because I came across the same question. So my question for Squarespace was, can you tell me whether the new WebP feature fixes these issues that I was having inadvertently? In other words, are you resizing and optimizing while you're converting? Or are you just converting the images from JPEG to WebP? Squarespace's response was, so the WebP format helps to reduce loading time within Squarespace sites, and it may help out, but it does not adjust the file size of it. It only converts it. I'll share our guide for reference. So let's take a look. This is the guide that they gave me. And if you click here on the sidebar, WebP file format, it'll drag you down to this section. So basically what they're saying is to optimize your site's performance, they recommend that you use WebP. That's great. That's what we are here to do. The problem is for existing websites like mine and like my clients from last month, she already had roughly 6,500 images on her website. Now, a lot of those we set up together when we first launched her site last year. So a lot of those are already correctly sized or within the recommended size limit from Squarespace or SEO Space. A lot of them were okay, but there were a large portion of them that she had added since we launched that were a lot bigger than they needed to be. And I was having trouble finding which ones were too big because the asset library doesn't really help us with that yet. Don't worry, we put in a feature request. I'll also give you a link below in the description so that you can upvote my feature request if you're a Circle member, because they definitely need to help us fix this. So what's happening is, according to them, when you upload an image to Squarespace, we convert it to the WebP format and display that version in your site content, so on the actual page. The original file remains in your asset library, which means the original JPEG or PNG or GIF file is still visible in your asset library. You won't see it replaced with a WebP. Any edits to the file will also apply to any WebP versions that they've converted for us in the hidden part that we can't see. You can also upload WebP file directly to your website. For all intents and purposes, the asset library will look exactly the same now as it did before they introduced this feature, except on the back end, they're also converting those files to WebP to show our website visitors, which is good, but it doesn't fix the entire problem if there was a problem to start with. Before I move on and dig into that, you should also know that if you don't want your website images to be converted, you can opt out following these two steps within your website settings. This link to their guide is also linked right here inside the blog post that is accompanying this video. So you can go investigate that for yourself if you want to. The takeaway here is that Squarespace is converting the files for us, but they are not also resizing and optimizing them to be the lowest file size possible while maintaining quality. That part is up to us. How do we fix this if we have existing images on our website? So, my question was, what happens if they're only converting it? How much will that file actually change? So, I did a test. So, let's look at that together because, of course, I did a test, right? The converted versus optimized images test is basically just an image that I downloaded from Unsplash, which happens to be this exact image in case you care. And I downloaded the image, but grabbed the original file size, which was over 3,000 pixels wide by a little over 2,000 tall. This screenshot shows the list of files in my Finder, and I highlighted them with different colors so that you could see by comparison what I did versus the file size that was output based on those settings. But here is the table that breaks it down for you. So the original image, as I downloaded it from Unsplash, was about 1 MB. That's the starting point. When I used PixResize to convert that JPEG to WebP by keeping it at 100% of the quality, the same as the original, the file actually jumped up to 4.6 megabytes. That was the largest the file had ever been, right? It started at 1 MB, then we converted it from JPEG to WebP and it jumped up to almost 5 MB. I don't know that this is the same process Squarespace would be using when they're converting it. So if you're doing the converting, you need to make sure you also adjust the quality and other things too, not just convert the file. The second conversion that I did was also reducing the quality. So instead of keeping the file quality at 100%, I reduced it to 80%, but I didn't also resize the dimensions of the image. It reduced it from 1 MB down to 866 kilobytes, which is roughly a little more than 3/4 of the size that it was. So it's better, but it's still too big. Then I also adjusted the size or the dimensions of the image. So in this last test, I converted it to WebP, I changed the quality to 80%, and I changed the max width of the image to 2,000 pixels. And that reduced it to 163 kilobytes, which is roughly a fifth or so of the original size. And that was perfect for web because that is fitting within the 250 to 500 kilobyte range that we were aiming for. So if the dimensions of the image stay the same, the file size stays pretty large. If the image is just converted from JPEG to WebP, but it was large to start with, again, it stays too large. So it's up to us to optimize it as best we can before we upload it to Squarespace. And if we've already added it to Squarespace or whatever your web provider is, then you probably should be replacing these and fixing them. That brings us to the next step. Most people have oversized images and they either aren't aware of it or they don't know that it's possible to fix that. So before I get into the weeds of doing exactly that, let's first quickly break down, just in case you missed the previous video, what the file size is that you're aiming for. The abbreviation for the suffix, I guess, of the file format you're looking for is KB or kilobytes. If it says anything else, that's wrong. You don't ever want to put anything else on your website. Only anything that's KB, preferably well under 1,000, because anything over that is becoming megabytes. That's the next designation up. So your goal is to keep everything under 500 kilobytes based on Squarespace's recommendation, but ideally under 250 kilobytes, which is SEO Space's recommendation. And I'm going to listen to them because that's lower. We can do it. It's possible without affecting the quality. And the smaller the images are, the better it is for your SEO. And they are the SEO experts. All right. So most people have oversized images. We just established that, but now we know what the goal is, right? There is a way for existing images to be downloaded and optimized in one full swing. So let me back up a second. If you are about to add images for the first time to your website, then go back and watch this video first because that one will walk you through a process of optimizing and resizing to start with. But that process is a little slower. So watch that one if you haven't put it on your website yet. This tutorial is specifically for how to fix oversized images on your website using SEO Space, because that is the easiest way to do it, frankly. And yes, I am an SEO Space affiliate. If you use my link in the description below, I will get a small commission at no extra cost to you, but I've been using it for years since they launched. They are genuinely the best option, specifically for Squarespace websites. Well, there really isn't another option, but it wouldn't matter if there was because Henry and his team at SEO Space are incredible. That's just my opinion. Let's say, let me turn on my Chrome extension here. So if you have it open, you'll be able to see this in the bottom corner. And what we want to do is we want to scan a page. Now this will be a fun test because I didn't actually scan this page yet, so I don't know what it's going to return. We're going to do a scan without a keyword, just because that'll be a little faster. So it's gonna crawl my page and look for stuff that's oversized. And I guarantee you it's gonna find something. All right, so it just finished the scan. And now we can see that I have some room for improvement, but the score is already pretty decent. So if we look at the images tab here, it's going to show that the image file size on a few of these is too big. And since I'm seeing other YouTube thumbnails, I'm guessing these are all coming from this summary block down here at the bottom, which is these down here. So that's not even part of the post. We can use it as practice. They're already pretty low. If we look at 265, 284, 266, these are all, oop, that one's a little big, but that's probably directly from Unsplash. 340, 253, 398, 322, 328. They're all okay. They're all so far under Squarespace's limit of 500, so I'm not super worried about it. However, if that was not the case and one of these was really large, for example, 5 megabytes, 2 megabytes, 1 megabyte, 14 megabytes, if we see MB here or over 1,000 before the decimal, we're in trouble. So all you have to do in order to fix this, because you can't download images from Squarespace directly without right-clicking on it from your asset library and blah, 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 this is the fastest way to do it. So scan your live page and then click this icon right here. It says compress and download if you hover over it. So let's just find this one. We're going to compress and download that one first because that was large. Let's look for another larger one. That one's almost 400. That's a great example right there, 2,318.63 kilobytes. That means that image is 2 megabytes. That's something we need to fix. So let's select all of these actually, compress and download as a group. Okay, I think it's done. So now we can see everything that it just downloaded for me. And remember this one, 2,318 kilobytes? That one was resized to 243 kilobytes, but it also turned it into a JPEG. So that's not fun. We'll have to fix that on our own. I'm going to highlight that one as red so I don't use it. But for the rest of these, it looks like it also fixed some of the naming conventions for me too by adding plus signs in the place of spaces in my file names, which is good. So I'm going to deselect that one, put these all in a folder. And now let's take a look at that. So the largest one, if we sort them by size, is 250 kilobytes. That's awesome. So let me explain what just happened. We selected them with SEO Space. It not only downloaded them for me, but it also optimized them or resized them for me. So now I can skip that process and I just need to go into Squarespace and upload the ones that replace these images. For me, and specifically, that means that, for example, this YouTube thumbnail in that blog post needs to be swapped out. So that will be relatively easy. Let's go into my website and fix that. So now we have my blog open, and what it's bringing up are images from the thumbnails showing up here because that's what's showing up in the summary block at the bottom of my blog. So I know that this one was an issue. So we can remove that image and then I'm going to drag it in and upload it to replace it. It's going to take a second and now I have that. So I'm going to save. And now that thumbnail that shows up on the other blog post in the summary block is going to be better sized because I just went through that process with SEO Space. Now I want to point out that the files it gave me in this process are not WebP, they are JPEG, but that doesn't necessarily matter. They could be a lot smaller if they were WebP files, But because they're still under the limit, I don't actually care in this particular use case. So what you're looking for is the easiest barrier to entry. And since you have to hunt down these images to replace them, let's skip a step or two. If you are creating new optimized images to add to your website, then yeah, convert them to WebP and then upload them. But if you're doing this process, it would be an additional step to convert them as well as what we just did to get them off the website in the first place. So if we go through this list here, I can just replace all of these. We'll just drag that in. Once it finishes uploading, we'll click save. One little pro tip I have for Mac users is I like to right click and choose a tag color so that I can see which ones I have done and which ones I haven't. Okay, so I'm going to click on this icon here and sort them by size. This one is 250 KB. So let's do that one first. That would be this blog post. Give it a second. This one is older. I think that might be this post. Yep. Okay, so you kind of get the hang of it. You saw me do that a few times. Now, I want to caveat that by saying if you are replacing images in your asset library, so let's go back and take a look at that. You're getting a little behind the scenes peek at the overwhelm that is in my asset library. Now you're going to have a couple of different versions of the images you had in here to start with because the ones that you had that are too big are still in here. We did not actually replace them. We removed them from the use case, that particular one, and we replaced it with the new one, but both versions are still in here. So as you're going, it might be helpful for you to search through your files by name, whatever the original file name was, and delete the old one. So if I look for YouTube thumbnail, for example, I should be able to find, like, this is the original thumbnail for that one. I know we replaced that one, and I know we replaced this one. I could delete those. Let's just try that and see what happens. So when you delete things from your asset library, it stays in your trash, which is right here for the next 30 days. You can always restore it if you want to, but the thing that's important to check is whether or not that actually broke anything. Because if you delete it from the asset library without tracking down all the instances where you have used that one photo, reused it basically, then some of the instances where you've reused that image, they might not be displaying anymore. So it's always good practice to go back through your site and track down any missing images. So let's scroll down and take a look here. Looks like they're still showing up. Yep, they're all still there. So we did good. Now let's go back up to the top and check the main feed. No broken images yet. Oh, that one is broken. Okay, let's refresh the page real quick to see if that is real. Yes, it is real. Okay, so we need to go back and double check that blog post. So if you go back and check and the image is in fact there, you can always go back and remove it and add it again. So that's this one. If you're not sure, click here, look at the file name, see where it says compressed at the end. That's how I know this is the one that I just added. So I'm going to replace it again and then save the change. If it's still missing, then it's probably just cookied that way and we need to clear our cookies. Okay, so what we're gonna do, up at the top of your browser, click this icon, click cookies and site data. This is for a Chrome browser, by the way. And if you click that, you can delete the cookies for all three of these top ones that are listed for the site. And then we're gonna reload it without those cookies. So after renaming the file that I uploaded and adding it back in, I was having trouble seeing a broken image here, even though I know I had just replaced it. Then I decided to clear my cache and cookies via this option here. And then I selected everything and deleted it, reloaded the page. It was still broken, So I decided to double check to see if there was some sort of cookie I was missing. And I decided to load the website in an incognito or private window. And lo and behold, there it is. So the issue is some sort of cookie. It's still trying to pull the old image that I just replaced, but it is actually fixed. So the moral of that story is this process of going back and fixing images that are already on your website is more difficult and more time consuming than doing it in the first place before you add them to your website, no matter what platform you're on. Squarespace does make this process pretty tricky, I will admit. So, if you're a Circle member and you're watching this, please go to the link in the description below and click on or upvote the feature request that specifically asks them to include in the asset library. If we click on that little list icon and switch to see it in list mode, in addition to file format, I also want to see the file size from this view. And I also want to be able to sort them based on this. So right now, the only method we can use to sort files is by name or by date added, but I also want to see file size and I want to be able to sort them by file size for all of the images in our entire asset library, because otherwise we don't know where they are and we can't figure out how to replace them if we'd have to click on them individually one at a time. If you're not sure what the file size is, you can click here, click on file details, and it will show you what the file details are. Or you can click on any image in your library by double clicking on it and seeing the file size information that way, but that is individual. So not helpful if you have thousands of images in your library like I do. The other thing that the Squarespace's asset library doesn't help you with is you just saw me go through that process. And if you go and delete an image, it doesn't tell you where that image exists or if it's being used. It says it might be being used. The pop-up errors, before it actually deletes it, it says that file may be used on your website. It doesn't say it is, it says it might be, and it doesn't tell you where. So that's part 2 of my feature request, to figure out when we delete files, where do they live on the website? What will break if I delete this? And that is very important piece of this too, because if you're fixing images on your website, you need to go track it down manually as of recording. So when I went through this with my client site last month, I deleted all the images that literally were so big we couldn't keep them in her asset library because I didn't want her to accidentally use them again in the future. So we deleted them all, and then I went through her page, combing through everything, looking for broken images and replacing them that way. If you do see one like you did here, that's broken, usually it's going to tell you what the file name is in that spot. Even if you're in the back end of Squarespace and you look to go click on the image block, it'll tell you what the original file name was. You can grab a portion of that and copy it to your clipboard and then search your asset library for that file name, which makes it a lot easier to sort through your actual existing images and look for whatever you're replacing it with. Hopefully they have a very similar file name. Anyway, I know that was a lot. Hopefully that's helpful for you. It's not an easy process, but SEO Space does make it easier because they literally scan your page and they tell you what's broken and where, what to fix and where, and they also give you the option to download each of these oversized images and it compresses them at the same time it's downloading them. That way you don't have 3 or 4 steps, you have 2 steps. You download and optimize it here, then you upload it in Squarespace and go fix it individually. Unfortunately, SEO Space has said they don't have access to the whole process. They can only do this part for us as of recording, but hopefully Squarespace will step up their shit and help us fix this problem. So the most important tip I have for you as I wrap up this video is to tackle your most important pages first. If I were to start doing this for my website, I would not start with my blog. I would start with my homepage and then perhaps my services page and then my contact page. So that's what I would encourage you to do so that you don't feel completely overwhelmed, especially if you're like me and you have a blog with 200, 300, however many posts there are over the last 10 years. That's a lot to tackle. So do what you can. Remember that websites are iterative. You don't have to be perfect. If you're not sure or don't understand what I'm talking about, it's not computing, watch this video next. I am a recovering perfectionist, and websites have helped me curb that actually because they are iterative and they are supposed to evolve and change with us as our business grows and changes. So it's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be a still printed picture forever, exactly the same as it was when you launched it. That would be bad. Which is a good thing. We want it to change. Use SEO Space. My affiliate link is in the description below. It will help you shorten this process of fixing your existing oversized images. And if you are uploading new ones, you can use Pix Resize to convert them and resize them and do all of that all in one go. So between the two of those things, this should shorten your process a lot. I hope that's helpful for you. That's all I have in this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.